The wind howled across the jagged ridgeline of the Bavarian Alps, a primal force that carved through the mountain passes and swept across the dramatic landscape below. Max Herrmann steadied his camera with hands that had grown accustomed to capturing life's most intense moments. At 52, his weathered face told stories of a man who had witnessed humanity at its extremes, both its darkest depths and most transcendent heights. The former war photojournalist had traded battlefield chaos for nature photography, seeking solace in these mountains after losing his wife Elena to cancer 18 months ago. The memory of her final days still haunted him. The hospital rooms with their antiseptic smell, the machines beeping in rhythmic counterpoint to her labored breathing, the way her once vibrant eyes had grown distant as the disease claimed. Her photography had been his salvation, a way to focus on beauty when his personal world had collapsed into grief. Through his lens, he found fragments of meaning in the play of light across mountain ridges, in the dance of wildlife through alpine meadows, and the timeless drama of clouds gathering around ancient peaks. Behind him, Axel watched with alert amber eyes, his black and tan coat rippling in the mountain breeze. The 5-year-old German Shepherd carried himself with the disciplined poise that spoke of his military training. A scar along his left flank, barely visible beneath his thick fur, marked the injury that had ended his service career and redirected his path into Max's life 3 years ago. Their bond, though relatively new compared to the decades Max had shared with Elena, had become the photographer's anchor during the darkest days of his grief. "Just a few more minutes, boy," Max called, noticing Axel's attentive posture. The dog's ears had perked forward, his powerful frame shifting restlessly on the rocky ground. Max recognized the signs of Axel's growing unease. The subtle tension in his shoulders, the way his nose worked the air currents sweeping up from the valley below. Max adjusted his footing on the uneven terrain, leaning slightly forward to frame the perfect shot of an eagle soaring through the valley. The magnificent bird rode thermal currents with effortless grace, its wingspan creating a silhouette against the gathering storm clouds. The first raindrops began to fall as the rocks beneath his hiking boots grew slick with moisture, small rivulets forming between the stones. "Almost done, Axel," he murmured, more to himself than to the dog. The weight of his camera felt reassuring in his hands, a Nikon D850 with a telephoto lens that Elena had given him on their last anniversary together. Through it, he sought to capture not just images, but moments of transcendence that spoke to something deeper than mere visual beauty. Axel's warning bark shattered the moment, a sharp, authoritative sound that echoed across the mountainside. It came a split second before Max felt the ground shift beneath him, the limestone edge weakened by recent rains, and the constant freeze-thaw cycles of the alpine climate crumbled. Without warning, Max's stomach lurched as he felt himself pitching forward, his arms windmilling desperately as the camera swung wildly from its strap. The valley floor, beautiful in its distant perspective, just moments before now, yawned open as an imminent destination thousands of feet below. Then came the sharp, powerful grip on his jacket, Axel's jaws clamping down with precise strength that spoke to years of specialized training. The German Shepherd's weight counterbalanced Max's forward momentum. His powerful legs braced against the rocky ground as he pulled backward with all his might. Max felt himself being dragged away from the edge. The dog's low growl vibrating through the fabric of his jacket, not a sound of aggression, but of intense effort. When they were several feet from the crumbling edge, Max collapsed onto solid ground, his heart hammering against his ribs with such force he could feel each beat resonating through his entire body. Axel stood over him, rain darkening his coat as he watched his master with concerned eyes. The dog's breath came in quick pants, small clouds forming in the cooling air, but his posture remained vigilant, as if assessing Max for injuries. "Good boy," Max whispered, reaching up to touch the dog's wet muzzle with trembling fingers. "Good boy, Axel." The simple words felt woefully inadequate for what had just transpired, but the German Shepherd pressed his nose into Max's palm in acknowledgement of their bond. As the rain intensified, turning from scattered drops to a steady downpour, Max gathered himself and his equipment. The near-death experience had left him shaken, his photographer's calm replaced by the primal awareness of mortality that he had not felt since his days documenting conflicts in war-torn regions. With Axel at his side, he began the careful descent toward the safety of the valley, each step measured and deliberate on the increasingly treacherous path. The cabin Max called home nestled against the foothills of the Bavarian Alps, its wooden structure weathered by decades of alpine seasons. It had been a spontaneous purchase after Elena's death, a retreat from their Munich apartment where memories of her lingered in every corner. The property's isolation had initially appealed to Max's grief-stricken desire for solitude, but now it offered something more, a sanctuary where he and Axel could build a new life together. That evening, as rain lashed against the windows and thunder rolled across the mountains, Max sat before the fireplace, nursing a glass of scotch. Axel lay at his feet, seemingly asleep, but with one ear perpetually alert to the sounds beyond their shelter. The dog's quick action on the mountain played on repeat in Max's mind. There had been something almost preternatural about Axel's response, not just the warning bark that had preceded the collapse by mere seconds, but the calculated strength with which he had pulled Max to safety. "You're something special, aren't you?" Max murmured, reaching down to stroke the dog's head. Axel's eyes opened at the touch and meeting Max's gaze, with an intelligence that sometimes unnerved him. Max's phone buzzed on the side table, a rare occurrence given the cabin's remote location and spotty reception. The caller ID showed Klaus Weber, the former military handler, who had facilitated Axel's adoption after the dog's injury had deemed him unsuitable for continued service. Max hadn't spoken to the man in nearly a year. "Klaus Wanahama," Max answered, his voice rough from disuse. "This is unexpected." Max, the voice on the other end, was tense, lacking the usual warmth of their infrequent communications. "I need to know if you've noticed anything unusual lately. Anyone showing interest in Axel?" The question sent a chill through Max that had nothing to do with the storm outside. What kind of interest? People asking questions. Perhaps someone watching your movements. Klaus's voice dropped lower. "It's important, Max." Max's mind flashed to the previous week, a man at the trailhead parking area who had studied Axel with unusual intensity, asking pointed questions about the dog's training and background. At the time, Max had dismissed him as merely an enthusiast, impressed by Axel's discipline and bearing. There was someone, Max admitted reluctantly, military type I thought, asked about Axel specifically. Klaus's sharp intake of breath was audible even through the poor connection. "Listen carefully. Max Axel isn't just any service dog. He was part of Project Sentinel, a classified program developing enhanced canine capabilities. I can't say more over an unsecured line, but you need to be careful." Max looked down at Axel, who had risen to a sitting position, his attention fixed on Max's face, as if he understood the gravity of the conversation. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means his cognitive abilities, sensory perception, problem-solving skills, they're all beyond normal canine capacity." Klaus paused. "And now someone's asking questions about him. That's not good, Max. Not good at all." Before Max could press for more details, Klaus promised to call again from a secure line and ended the call. The abrupt conclusion left Max staring at his phone questions, multiplying in his mind as the storm intensified outside. That night, sleep eluded him. He lay awake listening to the rain, his thoughts churning with Klaus's cryptic warning. Axel had positioned himself not at the foot of the bed as usual, but directly beside the bedroom door, his posture suggesting a guard on duty rather than a pet at rest. In the gray light of dawn, Max rose early and began methodically checking the cabin's perimeter. The rain had stopped, leaving behind a landscape transformed by moisture. Glistening rocks, saturated earth, trees dripping with residual rainwater. Nothing seemed out of place, yet an uneasiness had settled over him that refused to dissipate. Axel stayed close, his behavior subtly altered, The dog moved with heightened awareness, his attention constantly shifting to scan their surroundings. When a twig snapped in the distance, his reaction was immediate. Not the excited curiosity of a dog detecting wildlife, but the focused alertness of a trained operative identifying a potential threat. Max retreated inside and retrieved his old field journal, a habit from his war correspondence days. In it, he began documenting Axel's behaviors, looking for patterns that might confirm or refute Klaus's claims of enhancement. The photographer in him observed with clinical detachment, noting the dog's reactions to various stimuli. The way he processed commands his problem-solving approaches when faced with obstacles. By midday, Max had filled several pages with observations that, taken individually, might be attributed to excellent training and natural intelligence. Collectively, however, they painted a picture of capabilities that stretched the boundaries of what he understood about canine cognition. As he closed the journal, his satellite phone kept for emergencies in this remote region emitted its distinctive tone. Klaus, again this time, speaking quickly and with greater urgency. "They know where you are," he said without preamble. "Helix Biometrics private research firm trying to recreate the military's enhancement program. They've been tracking former Sentinel subjects for months. How would they even know about Axel?" Max demanded, watching as the dog's ears pricked forward at the tension in his voice. "Information leaks security breach doesn't matter now. What matters is that they're coming today, possibly. You need to move Max. Take the emergency kit I gave you when you adopted him and head into the mountains. I'll contact you when I can with a secure extraction plan." The call ended before Max could respond. He stood frozen for a moment, the phone still gripped in his hand as the reality of their situation crystallized. Then training and instinct took over, the same mindset that had kept him alive in conflict zones from Bosnia to Syria. Moving with practiced efficiency, Max retrieved the kit Klaus had given him, a waterproof container he'd stored in the back of his closet without much thought. Inside, he found cash in multiple currencies, a satellite tracking device, documentation with an alternate identity, and a USB drive. Beneath these items lay something unexpected, a military-grade canine tactical vest that would fit Axel perfectly. As Max packed essentials into his weatherproof backpack, the same one that had accompanied him through war zones, he tried to process the implications of Klaus's warning. What kind of enhancement program would create such interest in a retired military dog? What had been done to Axel, and what did these people want with him now? The sound of a vehicle approaching on the rarely used access road interrupted his thoughts. Axel was already at the window, his posture rigid, a low growl building in his chest. Max moved silently to peer through the blinds. A black SUV with tinted windows had stopped at the edge of the clearing, its engine still running. Two men emerged, one tall and lean, with the unmistakable bearing of military training, the other shorter, with the careful movements of someone accustomed to precision work. Max's mind raced through options. The cabin had only two exits, the front door facing the clearing where the SUV was parked, and a back door leading toward the forest and the rising slope of the mountain beyond. The decision was made in seconds. "Axel," he whispered, securing the tactical vest around the dog's powerful frame. Silent, the command one he rarely used, transformed Axel's demeanor instantly. The German shepherd moved without sound, staying close to Max as they slipped through the back door and into the cover of the dense pine forest. Years of navigating treacherous terrain as a photographer served Max well as they made their way upslope using natural features for concealment, leaving minimal signs of their passage. From a vantage point above the cabin, partially concealed by a granite outcropping, Max watched through his camera's telephoto lens as the men forced entry into his home. Their movements were methodical, professional, not the random destruction of common thieves, but the systematic search of trained operatives. When they emerged empty-handed, the taller man spoke into a radio, his expression grim with displeasure. Max lowered the camera, his decision made. They would head deeper into the mountains using the network of hiking trails he had come to know intimately over the past year. With Axel's capabilities, whatever their full extent might be, and his own experience in hostile environments, they stood a chance of evading pursuit long enough for Klaus to arrange whatever extraction he had mentioned. As they moved through the alpine forest, Max couldn't help but reflect on the irony of his situation. He had come to these mountains seeking peace after losing Elena, hoping to escape the chaos and danger that had defined his professional life. Now he found himself once again a fugitive from forces he didn't fully understand, with only his instincts and a mysteriously enhanced German Shepherd as allies. The difference was that this time he wasn't documenting the story, he was living it. And the stakes weren't just professional, they were deeply personal. Whatever Axel was, whatever had been done to him, the bond they had formed was real. Max would protect that bond with the same determination that Axel had shown in saving him from the crumbling cliff edge. As they crested a ridge and the vast expanse of the Bavarian Alps opened before them, Max felt a strange sense of clarity cut through his anxiety. They were in danger, yes, but they were also free. And in freedom there was possibility. "Come on, boy," he said softly to Axel, who looked up at him with those intelligent amber eyes. "We've got a long way to go." The first 24 hours of their flight passed in a blur of constant movement, strategic rest periods, and hypervigilance. Max led them along lesser-known trails, occasionally veering off established paths to follow game tracks or traverse areas where their scent would be difficult to track. Throughout their journey, Axel demonstrated abilities that increasingly confirmed Klaus's claims about his enhanced nature. The German Shepherd detected approaching hikers long before they came into view, distinguishing between casual outdoors enthusiasts and the more purposeful movements of what Max assumed were Helix operatives searching the trail networks. When they needed to cross exposed areas, Axel would freeze, assessing the landscape with preternatural focus before either proceeding or indicating an alternative route with subtle body language that Max was learning to read. On their second night sheltered in a small cave above the tree line, Max finally examined the USB drive from Klaus's emergency kit. His laptop, fortunately fully charged before their hasty departure, revealed files documenting aspects of Project Sentinel. Most were heavily redacted, but enough information remained to piece together the program's basic framework. Project Sentinel had begun as a conventional military working dog program before evolving into something far more ambitious. Scientists had developed a combination of specialized training protocols and biochemical interventions designed to enhance canine cognitive function, sensory capabilities, and problem-solving skills. The goal had been to create canine operatives capable of complex autonomous decision-making while maintaining the loyalty and trainability that made dogs valuable military assets. According to the files, only 12 dogs had advanced to the final stages of the program before ethical concerns and budget constraints led to its official termination 3 years earlier. Axel, designated Sentinel-7 in the documents, had been among the most promising subjects before an injury during a training exercise had deemed him unsuitable for continued service. What the files didn't explain was why a private company like Helix Biometrics would be pursuing former Sentinel subjects with such determination. The documentation ended with the program's termination and the placement of surviving enhanced dogs with carefully selected handlers, primarily former military personnel, who could manage their unique needs without drawing attention to their exceptional abilities. As Max closed the laptop to conserve battery, he looked at Axel, seeing him with new eyes. The dog lay at the cave entrance, his posture relaxed but vigilant. How much did Axel understand about their situation? How much of his apparent intelligence was the result of artificial enhancement rather than natural canine cognition? "What did they do to you, boy?" Max whispered, reaching out to stroke the dog's head. Axel met his gaze with those expressive amber eyes, and Max felt the familiar connection between them, a bond that transcended whatever biological modifications might underlie the German Shepherd's capabilities. Enhanced or not, Axel was still the companion who had pulled him back from the brink of despair after Elena's death, who had given him purpose when grief had threatened to consume him. The satellite phone vibrated in Max's pocket. Klaus again, his voice tight with urgency. "Your cabin was just the beginning," he said without greeting. "They've expanded the search perimeter. These people are serious, Max. They've invested millions in trying to recreate the Sentinel program without military oversight. A subject like Axel, fully developed with proven field success, would be invaluable to them. What exactly would they do with him? Max asked, his hand instinctively moving to rest on Axel's back. Best case, extensive testing, probably tissue samples for genetic analysis. Worst case, Klaus paused, vivisection to understand the neurological adaptations. Either way, Axel wouldn't survive their research intact. The blunt assessment sent a chill through Max. So what's our play here? I'm working on securing help, but it's complicated. Project Sentinel officially never existed, which means its subjects technically don't have any special protected status. On paper, Axel is just a retired military working dog. He's a lot more than that, Max said firmly. I know, Klaus's voice softened momentarily. That's why I placed him with you. I knew you'd see him for what he is, not just an asset or an experiment, but a being deserving of respect. The line crackled with static before Klaus continued. There's someone who might help Dr. Sophia Reiter. She was a consulting neuroscientist on Project Sentinel before resigning over ethical concerns. She's in Vienna now. I'm sending coordinates to your tracking device. Vienna. Max repeated, that's at least 100 kilometers from here, through mountainous terrain and across the Austrian border. It's your best chance Sophia has connections and resources we'll need if we're going to establish any kind of legal protection for Axel Plus. She was friends with Elena in university. Did she ever mention her? The unexpected connection to his late wife momentarily stunned Max. Elena never talked much about her university days. He said finally she focused on the present. Well, Sophia remembered her fondly. When I told her who Axel's new handler was, she specifically approved the placement because of that connection. She'll help you if you can reach her. Klaus paused again. But Max, you need to understand, Helix has resources that rival small nations. They've compromised people in multiple government agencies. Trust no one except Sophia once you reach Vienna. After the call ended, Max studied the coordinates now displayed on the tracking device Vienna represented. Hope a potential ally with the knowledge and connections to help them. But the journey there would be perilous, requiring them to traverse some of the most challenging terrain in the Eastern Alps, while evading pursuers with seemingly unlimited resources. As dawn broke over the mountains bathing the landscape in golden light, Max made his decision. They would head east following the Alpine ridge systems toward Austria, staying high where surveillance would be more difficult, and Axel's enhanced senses would give them the greatest advantage. The next 5 days tested them both to their limits. Spring in the Alps was unpredictable sunshine, and clear skies could transform within minutes to driving rain or even snow at higher elevations. They encountered natural obstacles that required careful navigation, swollen streams from melting snow, unstable ski slopes, narrow ledges along precipitous drops. Throughout these challenges, the bond between man and dog deepened and evolved. Max came to rely not just on Axel's enhanced capabilities, but on the partnership they were forging through shared adversity. When they needed to cross a swift-flowing stream, Axel found the narrowest point and led the way, demonstrating the safest path across slippery rocks. When Max's energy flagged after a particularly grueling ascent, Axel would press against his leg, offering both physical support and a reminder of their shared purpose. On the 6th day, as they descended toward a small mountain village just inside the Austrian border, Max spotted the first definitive sign that their pursuers were closing in. Through his camera's telephoto lens, he observed 2 men in hiking gear, questioning locals in the village square. Their equipment was too new, their posture too alert for casual hikers. More telling was the photograph one of them showed to a shopkeeper. Max recognized the distinctive shape of Axel's profile. They retreated higher into the forest above the village, finding shelter in an abandoned hunter's blind. As darkness fell, Max weighed their options. They needed supplies. Their food was nearly exhausted, and Max's water purification tablets were running low. But entering the village now would be too risky. We'll have to bypass it entirely, he told Axel, studying their map by the dim light of his headlamp. There's another village 20 kilometers east, but it means crossing this ridge at night. He traced the route with his finger, noting the challenging terrain it would entail. Axel watched the movement of Max's hand across the map, his eyes following with an intensity that suggested more than casual interest. When Max folded the map, the German Shepherd rose and moved to the blind's entrance, looking back expectantly. "Not yet," Max said softly. "We'll wait until full dark." 3 hours later, they set out under a cloud-covered sky that offered perfect concealment but made navigation treacherous. Max relied on his headlamp kept at its lowest setting and the luminous dial of his compass to maintain their eastward course. Axel moved ahead his enhanced night vision, allowing him to pick out the safest path through the rocky terrain. They had covered perhaps 5 kilometers when Axel suddenly froze, his body rigid with alertness. Max immediately extinguished his headlamp and dropped to a crouch beside the dog. For several minutes they remained motionless, listening to the night sounds of the alpine forest. Then Max heard it, the faint but unmistakable sound of human movement through underbrush, accompanied by the soft click of tactical gear. A search team moving parallel to their position, but still some distance away. The wind direction was in their favor, carrying their scent away from the searchers, but any change in the air currents could reveal their presence. Axel turned his head, looking at Max with unmistakable purpose, before glancing toward a densely wooded slope to their right away from their planned route, but also away from the search team. Max nodded, trusting the dog's instincts, and they began a careful retreat into the deeper shadows of the forest. For the next hour, they moved in near total darkness, with Max keeping one hand lightly on Axel's back for guidance. The German Shepherd led them through a complex series of turns that seemed designed to confuse any tracking effort, occasionally doubling back or crossing rocky outcroppings that would hold minimal scent. By dawn, they had put significant distance between themselves and their pursuers, but at the cost of deviating substantially from their planned route to Vienna. Max consulted the map again, calculating that they had added at least a day to their journey. "Smart move back there," he told Axel as they rested briefly in the shelter of a rocky overhang. "You knew exactly what to do." The dog's response was to press his head against Max's chest, a gesture of connection that had become increasingly frequent during their journey. In that moment of contact, Max felt a surge of protective determination. Whatever it took, he would get Axel to Vienna and find a way to ensure his safety. The next 3 days passed without detection, though they observed helicopter sweeps of the valleys below their position. Twice, Max's military contacts through his photojournalism career had taught him the basics of evading aerial surveillance, and they used natural features for concealment whenever the distinctive sound of rotors echoed through the mountains. On the 9th day of their journey, exhausted and running dangerously low on supplies, they reached the outskirts of Vienna. The transition from wilderness to civilization presented new challenges. Axel's tactical vest had been stowed in Max's backpack, replaced by a conventional collar and leash to help them blend in, but the German Shepherd's distinctive bearing and obvious training still drew attention. Using the last of his emergency cash, Max purchased clean clothes at a suburban shopping center and used a public restroom to make himself presentable. With his beard trimmed and wearing fresh attire, he transformed from a wild-looking mountain fugitive to a merely disheveled tourist with his well-behaved dog. They boarded a tram into the city center, Max tensely scanning each new passenger for signs of threat. Axel sat quietly at his feet, but the dog's alertness was evident in the constant, subtle movements of his ears and the way his eyes tracked each person who entered their car. Dr. Sophia Reiter's address led them to an elegant apartment building in Vienna's 4th district. As they approached the ornate entrance, Max felt a moment of doubt. How would this respected neuroscientist react to their sudden appearance? Would she really risk her position and reputation to help them based on a long-ago friendship with Elena? Before he could reconsider, Axel nudged his hand decisively, as if sensing his hesitation. The simple gesture steadied him. They had come too far to turn back now. Max pressed the intercom button for apartment 7B and waited, his heart pounding with exhaustion and anxiety. "Yes," a woman's voice, precise and slightly accented, answered after several seconds. "Dr. Reiter." My name is Max Herrmann. Klaus Weber suggested I contact you regarding a mutual interest. He hesitated, unsure how much to say over the potentially monitored system. There was a long pause before the voice returned. Hermann, Elena's husband. Yes, Max confirmed, surprised by the immediate recognition. Another pause, then the buzzer sounded, unlocking the entrance door. 7th floor, come quickly. As they rode the elevator upward, Max found himself wondering what connection this woman had shared with Elena, a part of his wife's life he had never known. The doors opened onto a tastefully appointed hallway, at the end of which stood a woman in her early 50s, her silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in a neat twist, her posture radiating both caution and curiosity. As they approached, her eyes fixed not on Max, but on Axel, widening with what appeared to be recognition. "Sentinel 7, she murmured, then looked up at Max. "You have no idea what you've walked into, do you?" Dr. Sophia Rader's apartment reflected its owner, elegant, precise, and revealing little at first glance. Bookshelves lined the walls of her study, filled with academic texts on neuroscience, animal cognition, and ethics. Large windows overlooked a quiet Viennese courtyard, the late afternoon light filtering through sheer curtains to cast the room in a soft glow. Sophia moved with the efficient grace of someone accustomed to operating in high-pressure environments. She secured the apartment with practiced motions, checking locks, activating what appeared to be a signal jammer, drawing blinds against potential observation. "You'll need to remove your phone battery," she instructed Max, gesturing to the device in his pocket. "Helix has sophisticated tracking capabilities. Max complied without question, watching as she knelt to examine Axel more closely. The German Shepherd allowed her inspection with unusual patience, his amber eyes studying her with equal intensity. "He remembers me," Sophia said with quiet wonder, her fingers gently tracing the scar on Axel's flank. Cognitive retention was one of the program's primary objectives, but seeing it demonstrated after 3 years. She looked up at Max. "He's extraordinary, even among the Sentinel subjects. Klaus told me some of it," Max said, settling into an offered chair, his body finally registering the cumulative exhaustion of their 9-day journey. "The enhancement program Helix's interest. But I need to understand what we're dealing with. What exactly Axel is?" Sophia rose and moved to a locked cabinet, retrieving a bottle of scotch and 2 glasses. "First, let me say how sorry I was to hear about Elena. We lost touch after university, but she was remarkable, brilliant and compassionate in equal measure." She poured 2 generous measures and handed one to Max. "She would be proud of what you're doing for Axel." The unexpected mention of Elena caught Max off guard. He accepted the drink with a nod, unable to form words around the sudden tightness in his throat. Sophia took a seat across from him, her expression growing more serious. Project Sentinel began as a conventional military working dog program focused on improving canine performance through specialized training. I was brought in as a consulting neuroscientist to help understand how training affected canine brain development. She paused, sipping her scotch. But the military leadership wanted more than incremental improvements. They wanted transformation. "What kind of transformation?" Max asked, watching as Axel settled at his feet, still alert, despite their apparent safety. They wanted dogs with human-like problem-solving capabilities, but without the independence that might compromise their loyalty and reliability. Sophia's voice took on a clinical tone, as if distancing herself from the implications of her words. The approach was 2-pronged neurological enhancement through a proprietary compound that promoted neuroplasticity and connectivity, combined with an unprecedented training protocol designed to take advantage of that enhanced plasticity. "You're saying they chemically altered their brains?" Max felt a surge of protective anger. "In essence, yes, but it wasn't simply about making them smarter in the conventional sense." Sophia leaned forward, her professional demeanor momentarily giving way to genuine wonder. The enhancement program didn't just increase cognitive function, it amplified the fundamental qualities that make dogs such extraordinary companions. Their empathy, their protective instincts, their ability to form profound bonds with humans, all elevated to unprecedented levels. Max looked down at Axel, remembering the moment on the mountain when the dog had saved him from falling, the precise strength with which he had counterbalanced Max's weight, the seemingly intuitive understanding of exactly what was needed in that life or death moment. How many, he asked quietly. 12 dogs reached the final stage of enhancement. 7 were deployed in limited field operations before ethical concerns and budget realignments led to the program's official termination. Sophia's expression darkened, but the research, the formulations, the protocols, they weren't destroyed. And certain individuals involved in the program saw commercial potential beyond military applications. Helix Biometrics, Max applied, exactly founded by the former deputy director of Project Sentinel and backed by private capital with connections to various security contractors. Sophia refilled their glasses. They've been attempting to recreate the enhancement process, but with limited success. The original formulation was complex, and some of the key researchers, myself included, refused to participate in the commercialization efforts. So they want Axel for research. Max said, the pieces falling into place to reverse engineer whatever was done to him. That's part of it, Sophia confirmed. But there is more. The enhancement process created something unprecedented, a level of canine cognition and human-animal bonding that exists in a legal and ethical gray area. Are enhanced dogs simply property like conventional service animals? Or does their elevated cognitive function entitle them to special consideration? She rose and moved to her desk, retrieving a tablet. Helix isn't just pursuing Axel for research purposes. They're trying to establish legal precedent that enhanced animals remain conventional property, subject to the same ownership and transfer rights as any other animal. If they succeed, they could claim ownership of all former Sentinel subjects and any offspring they might produce. Offspring machina, Max looked up sharply. That's their long-term strategy. Breeding enhanced dogs would be far more efficient than recreating the enhancement process from scratch for each subject. Sophia handed him the tablet displaying internal Helix documents that Klaus had apparently obtained through his military connections. They've already secured 3 former Sentinel subjects. Axel is particularly valuable because his enhancement profile showed the highest stability and retention rates. Max scanned the documents, his photographer's eye quickly noting the clinical language used to describe living beings with thoughts and feelings, subjects instead of individuals, acquisition instead of capture, extraction protocols instead of kidnapping. The dehumanizing terminology reminded him of war zones where similar language was used to distance perpetrators from the humanity of their victims. So what's our play here? Max asked, unconsciously echoing his earlier question to Klaus. How do we keep Axel safe? Arthur? We need leverage, Sophia replied, taking the tablet back. Evidence of Helix's illegal activities combined with public exposure of what's at stake. I have connections in the EU's animal welfare regulatory bodies and with several influential ethics committees. With the right documentation, we could potentially establish special protected status for enhanced animals, like Axel. And where do we get this documentation? Sophia's expression grew grimmer. From Helix itself, their European research facility is located just outside Vienna, a converted pharmaceutical plant with state-of-the-art security. I've been monitoring their activities for months, building a case, but I need concrete evidence of their current operations. You're talking about breaking into their facility. It wasn't a question. Not exactly breaking in. Sophia allowed herself a small smile. I still have consultancy credentials that grant me limited access. The challenge would be accessing their secure servers and extracting the evidence without detection. Max considered this, absently stroking Axel's head as he thought. The dog looked up at him with those intelligent eyes, and Max felt the weight of responsibility settle more firmly on his shoulders. This wasn't just about evading pursuers anymore. It was about establishing protection that would allow Axel to live without constantly looking over his shoulder. I've documented war crimes and corporate malfeasance on 3 continents. Max said finally, I know how to gather evidence under dangerous conditions, but we'll need a solid plan and backup options if things go sideways. Sophia nodded, her expression reflecting both approval and concern. I've been developing contingencies, but having someone with your experience changes the equation. She glanced at her watch. We should rest now. You both look exhausted and will need clear heads to finalize the operation. She showed them to a guest room where Max gratefully showered away 9 days of mountain grime. As he emerged, he found Axel positioned at the bedroom door, not lying down to rest, but sitting upright, his posture suggesting he was standing guard. It's okay, boy, Max said softly, kneeling beside the German Shepherd. We're safe here for now. Axel maintained his vigilant posture for a moment longer before reluctantly settling onto the rug, though his eyes remained alert. Tracking Max's movements around the room, the behavior reinforced everything Sophia had explained about the Sentinel program. This wasn't simply trained obedience, but a profound sense of protective duty that seemed woven into the dog's enhanced consciousness. Max stretched out on the bed, his body aching from the prolonged journey through difficult terrain. As exhaustion pulled him towards sleep, his thoughts drifted to Elena. What would she have made of this situation? Her scientific mind would have been fascinated by the ethical implications of enhanced animal cognition, while her compassionate heart would have immediately recognized Axel as deserving protection. The thought of her brought both comfort and renewed determination as he finally surrendered to sleep. 3 days of intensive planning transformed Sophia's elegant apartment into an operations center. Maps and facility schematics covered her dining table, while multiple laptops displayed security protocols and personnel schedules that her contacts had provided. Max contributed his experience in covert documentation, developing strategies to capture evidence without detection. Axel's role in the operation became a subject of intense discussion. Sophia initially argued for leaving him behind during the infiltration, concerned that his presence might trigger security protocols specifically designed to detect enhanced canines. Max, however, insisted that Axel's abilities would be crucial if they encountered unexpected obstacles. He's not just a subject we're trying to protect, Max explained, watching as Axel methodically examined the facility schematics spread across the table, his attention suggesting comprehension beyond normal canine capacity. He's a partner in this operation. Sophia observed the interaction between man and dog with professional interest. The bond formation exceeds even our highest projections. She noted, the enhancement was designed to increase their capacity for human connection, but what you've developed with him goes beyond the parameters we anticipated. Maybe because I never saw him as an asset or an experiment. Max replied, from the beginning he was just Axel. The night before the operation, Sophia received intelligence that raised the stakes dramatically. A contact within Helix reported that the company was preparing to transfer the 3 captured Sentinel subjects to a more secure facility in Eastern Europe, a jurisdiction with minimal animal welfare regulations and limited international oversight. We need to document not just their research activities, but the condition of the captured subjects. Sophia told Max grimly, if we can prove they're being mistreated or held in conditions that don't account for their enhanced cognitive needs, it strengthens our legal position considerably. The infiltration plan leveraged Sophia's legitimate access as a consultant while using Max's skills to document areas beyond her authorized zones. Dressed in business attire, with his camera equipment disguised as standard corporate technology, Max would pose as a potential investor interested in Helix's canine cognitive enhancement research. Sophia would guide the tour, strategically creating opportunities for Max to capture evidence while maintaining plausible deniability. Axel presented the greatest challenge for their cover story. After much debate, they decided on a bold approach, hiding in plain sight. The German Shepherd would accompany them, openly presented as a conventional service animal belonging to Max, who would claim mild mobility issues requiring occasional support. It was a calculated risk, but Sophia believed that Helix personnel would be looking for attempts to smuggle Axel in covertly, not an overt presentation that suggested complete innocence. The morning of the operation dawned clear and cold. Max, dressed in the business suit Sophia had procured, Italian, cut conservative styling, the attire of a wealthy European investor. His camera equipment had been disguised within modified briefcase compartments, while specialized recording devices were concealed in ordinary accessories, a tie-clip cufflinks, and a seemingly conventional wristwatch. Axel underwent his own transformation. The tactical vest that had accompanied them through the mountains was replaced by a standard service dog harness with official-looking credentials. More importantly, Sophia had applied a temporary coloring agent to his coat, subtly altering his appearance to make him less immediately identifiable as Sentinel-7. Remember, Sophia instructed as they prepared to leave her apartment, maintain the cover story at all times. You're Alexander Bauer, representing private investors from Zurich. You're interested but skeptical, asking pointed questions because you're conducting due diligence. The more you challenge them, the more they'll try to impress you with details that could be valuable evidence. Max nodded, settling into the persona he had developed. As a photojournalist, he had often needed to adopt different identities to gain access to restricted areas or hostile environments. This role, the shrewd, somewhat arrogant investor, felt familiar enough to be convincing. Helix Biometrics Research Facility occupied a sprawling campus on Vienna's outskirts, its modern architecture and extensive security perimeter suggesting both prosperity and secrecy. As they approached the main gate in Sophia's Mercedes, Max felt Axel tense beside him in the back seat, the dog's posture becoming increasingly rigid as they neared the compound. He senses something, Max murmured, placing a calming hand on the German Shepherd's back. The other Sentinel subjects most likely, Sophia replied quietly. Part of their enhancement included heightened awareness of others from the program. It was designed as a tactical advantage for coordinated operations. The security checkpoint involved multiple layers of verification, ID scanning, vehicle inspection, and biometric confirmation. For Sophia, Max presented his forged credentials with practiced confidence, maintaining the slightly impatient demeanor of a busy executive. When the guard examined Axel's service animal documentation, Max detected a flicker of additional scrutiny, quickly masked by professional indifference. "They're suspicious," he whispered to Sophia as they were waved through the final checkpoint. "Expected," she replied calmly. "Just maintain the cover. Director Kruger is waiting in the main building." Director Anton Kruger greeted them in a sleek conference room overlooking the facility's central courtyard. In his mid-60s, with silver hair and piercing blue eyes, he projected authority tempered with scientific curiosity. His gaze lingered on Axel for several seconds longer than courtesy required, his expression unreadable. "Dr. Reiter, always a pleasure," he said, his accent suggesting Austrian heritage refined by international education. "And Mr. Bauer, welcome to Helix Biometrics. We're honored by your interest in our cognitive enhancement program." The tour began with carefully choreographed presentations of Helix's public-facing research, conventional canine training protocols, enhanced by proprietary neurological monitoring. Max played his role perfectly, asking pointed questions about methodology and return on investment that required increasingly detailed responses from Kruger and his staff. Throughout the presentations, Axel maintained his service dog demeanor with remarkable discipline, though Max could sense his heightened alertness. Occasionally, the German Shepherd's ears would shift slightly, as if tracking sounds beyond human perception, particularly when they moved toward the facility's restricted western wing. "Your service animal is exceptionally well-trained," Kruger commented during a brief refreshment break. "Belgian Malinois cross, if I'm not mistaken." "German Shepherd primarily," Max replied smoothly, with perhaps some Belgian influence a few generations back. He was trained in Switzerland by specialists in mobility assistance. Kruger nodded, his expression suggesting polite interest that didn't quite reach his eyes. "We find German Shepherds particularly receptive to advanced training protocols. Their cognitive baseline offers an excellent foundation for enhancement." The conversation was interrupted by a staff member requesting Kruger's attention for an urgent matter. As the director excused himself, Sophia leaned closer to Max. "He's testing you," she whispered. "He suspects something, but isn't certain. We need to accelerate the timeline." The restricted areas are on the next part of the tour. When Kruger returned, his manner had subtly shifted more. Guarded, more calculating, Mr. Bauer. I understand you have particular interest in our advanced cognition projects. Perhaps we could adjust our itinerary to focus on those areas. I'd appreciate that, Max replied, maintaining his investor persona. My clients are specifically interested in applications with military and private security potential. The Western Wing required additional security clearances, with Sophia using her consultant credentials to facilitate their access. As they moved deeper into the restricted area, the environment changed noticeably. More security personnel, more sophisticated monitoring systems, and a palpable increase in operational secrecy. Axel's behavior shifted as well. Though still outwardly calm, Max could feel the tension radiating through the dog's body as they passed laboratories with reinforced observation windows. Behind one such window, Max glimpsed what appeared to be a testing area where a black Labrador retriever was navigating a complex problem-solving apparatus under the watchful eyes of researchers. One of our standard subjects, Arakorn, Kruger explained, noticing Max's interest. Impressive capabilities, but still within conventional parameters. Our truly advanced work happens in the Secure Development Center. The Secure Development Center proved to be a separate building accessed via an underground passage. As they approached, Axel's pace slowed fractionally, not enough to draw attention from their escorts, but sufficient for Max to register his reluctance. Something about this area was triggering a response in the German Shepherd that went beyond normal caution. The underground passage opened into a reception area with multiple secure doors leading to different sections of the facility. Kruger led them toward a door marked Cognitive Assessment Unit, explaining that this was where their most promising subjects underwent evaluation. Before we proceed, he said, pausing before the security scanner, I should mention that some of our enhanced subject can be sensitive to the presence of unfamiliar animals. Perhaps your service dog should remain here with one of our staff. The suggestion, though presented casually, carried clear intent. Max felt his pulse quicken but maintained his composed exterior. I'm afraid that's not possible, he replied with the slight impatience of a privileged executive. My mobility issues are unpredictable. I require his assistance at all times. Kruger's expression hardened almost imperceptibly before he nodded. Of course, we'll proceed with caution. Beyond the secured door lay a corridor with observation rooms on either side. Through the windows, Max could see canines of various breeds undergoing different forms of testing. Some navigating physical obstacles, others engaged with interactive screens, displaying complex patterns, still others working with human handlers on communication exercises. Using his concealed camera equipment, Max documented everything while maintaining the appearance of an interested investor. Sophia facilitated the process by asking detailed technical questions that required Kruger and his staff to focus on her rather than Max's subtle documentation efforts. These are impressive, Max commented, gesturing toward a Belgian Malinois, demonstrating remarkable memory skills by identifying objects it had seen only briefly. But I understand you have more advanced subjects, the ones with military-grade enhancements. Kruger exchanged a glance with Sophia that contained volumes of unspoken communication. Those subjects are in our secure holding facility. Access is extremely limited. My clients would require demonstration of your most advanced capabilities before considering investment. Max pressed, projecting the entitled confidence of someone accustomed to getting his way. After a moment's consideration, Kruger nodded. A brief observation might be arranged. Follow me. They were led through another secured door and down a corridor with significantly heightened security armed guards, multiple biometric checkpoints, and environmental controls that suggested containment protocols beyond standard research requirements. Axel's demeanor changed markedly in this area, his body tensing and his attention focusing with laser-like intensity on their surroundings. The secure holding facility consisted of specialized enclosures, not conventional kennels, but carefully designed environments with cognitive enrichment features and sophisticated monitoring systems. In the first enclosure, a German Shepherd with distinctive markings paced with military precision, its movements suggesting both physical power and calculated restraint. Sentinel-3, Kruger said with unmistakable pride. Retrieved from a former handler in northern Germany 4 months ago, his cognitive assessment shows remarkable retention of enhanced capabilities despite minimal maintenance protocols during his time outside our care. Max felt a chill at the clinical description of what had clearly been a kidnapping operation. He documented the enclosure and its occupant while maintaining his investor persona, asking questions about performance metrics and potential applications. As they moved to the next enclosure, Axel's behavior became increasingly difficult to manage. The German Shepherd's attention was fixed on the occupied spaces, his body language communicating recognition and distress that Max struggled to conceal from their observers. The second enclosure contained a Belgian Malinois female, her lean frame suggesting recent weight loss. Her movements displaying the hypervigilance of an animal under stress, despite the apparently comfortable surroundings. Sentinel 10. Kruger identified her, our most recent acquisition, still adjusting to the research environment but showing promising response to the reinforcement protocols. Max noted the euphemistic language acquisition instead of capture, adjustment instead of confinement, stress reinforcement protocols instead of whatever methods they were using to ensure compliance. His documentation became more focused, capturing details that would reveal the true nature of the facility's operations. The third enclosure stood empty, its monitoring systems active, but its occupant absent. Sentinel 5 is currently in the Advanced Assessment Laboratory. Kruger explained, we're evaluating some unique cognitive patterns that emerged during his time with a civilian handler. As they completed the tour of the holding facility, Max had gathered substantial evidence of Helix's operations, enough to support Sophia's legal strategy if they could extract it safely. But the sight of the captured Sentinel subjects had shifted something in his perspective. This was no longer just about protecting Axel. It was about addressing a fundamental injustice being perpetrated against beings with advanced cognitive capabilities. Their exit from the secure area proceeded without incident until they reached the final checkpoint leading back to the main facility. As they approached the scanner, an alarm suddenly blared from a nearby security station. Security breach in Section C announced an automated voice over the facility's communication system. All personnel implement containment protocol, Theta. Kruger's demeanor transformed instantly from polished executive to commanding presence. Wait here, he instructed sharply before striding toward the security station where staff members were reviewing surveillance feeds with urgent focus. Sophia moved closer to Max, her voice barely audible. Something's wrong. They may have detected our documentation equipment, or... Her words were cut short as Kruger returned his expression, now openly suspicious. Dr. Reiter, Mr. Bauer, if that is your name, I'm afraid we have a situation that requires your cooperation. Our security systems have flagged anomalous readings from your service animal. Max maintained his composed facade with effort. What kind of readings? The kind that suggest he isn't what you've represented. Kruger's voice hardened as he gestured to security personnel who had moved to block the exit. In fact, our preliminary scan suggests a neurological pattern consistent with Sentinel enhancement protocols. The moment had arrived sooner than they had planned. Max exchanged a quick glance with Sophia, who gave an almost imperceptible nod, the signal to implement their emergency extraction plan. I have no idea what you're talking about, Max replied, injecting his voice with indignant confusion. This is outrageous treatment of potential investors. As he spoke, he shifted his position, slightly moving his hand to Axel's harness, where a concealed release mechanism was located. Sophia simultaneously activated something on her smartwatch, a signal jammer, that would temporarily disrupt the facility's internal communications. Kruger stepped forward, his patience clearly exhausted. Security will escort you to a holding area. While we verify your identities and examine your dog more thoroughly, I suggest you cooperate fully to avoid complications. Max's fingers found the release mechanism on Axel's harness. I'm afraid that won't be possible, he said calmly and pressed the hidden switch. The specialized harness dropped away, revealing the tactical vest underneath that had been concealed by its outer layer. At the same moment, Sophia's signal jammer activated, plunging the security systems into momentary confusion as screens flickered and communication devices emitted bursts of static. "Axel secure," Max commanded sharply. The German Shepherd responded with lightning speed, positioning himself between Max and the approaching security personnel. His posture transformed from service dog compliance to the alert readiness of a trained military operative, his warning growl carrying unmistakable intent. In the crucial moments of confusion that followed, Max and Sophia implemented their escape plan. Rather than attempting to reach the main exit, now surely locked down under security protocols, they moved toward an emergency evacuation route that Sophia's research had identified, a service corridor leading to a loading dock used for supply deliveries. Axel took point position, leading them through the corridor with purposeful speed, while Max and Sophia followed closely behind. The facility's alarm systems had fully activated, now filling the air with pulsing sound and strobing emergency lights. "They'll lock down all exits," Sophia warned as they navigated the service areas. "We have maybe 2 minutes before their backup systems override my jamming signal." The loading dock appeared ahead, a large roll-up door currently closed, but with a personnel door beside it that showed a glowing exit sign. As they approached, Axel suddenly stopped his posture, signaling danger ahead. Max peered cautiously around the corner and saw 2 security guards stationed at the exit. Their attention focused on the door, but their posture suggesting readiness for trouble. Direct confrontation wasn't an option. These men were armed, and violence would only undermine their ultimate goal of establishing legal protection for Axel and the other Sentinel subjects. "Distraction required," Max whispered to Sophia, who nodded and reached into her bag. The distraction came in the form of a specialized device that emitted the facility's emergency evacuation tone, a sound that would trigger established safety protocols, requiring all personnel to move to designated assembly points. Sophia activated it and tossed it down an adjacent corridor, where it landed out of sight but within clear, audible range. The familiar tone caused immediate response from the guards, who exchanged quick words before one moved to investigate, while the other maintained position at the exit. With the security presence halved, Max signaled to Axel, who understood the silent command perfectly. The German Shepherd moved with ghost-like silence until he was positioned behind the remaining guard. At Max's subtle hand signal, Axel emitted a low growl, just enough to cause the guard to turn into surprise, momentarily distracted from the exit he was protecting. In that crucial moment, Max and Sophia moved swiftly to the door. Using the electronic key card she had retained from her consultant credentials, Sophia unlocked the exit while Max prepared for their final dash to the vehicle they had positioned nearby as part of their extraction plan. The door opened to reveal the facility's rear service area, a concrete expanse leading to a perimeter fence beyond which their escape vehicle waited. Freedom was tantalizingly close, but the open space offered no cover for their crossing. Max whistled softly, calling Axel back to their position. The German Shepherd rejoined them with silent efficiency, his eyes alert to the danger of their situation. "On my signal," Max instructed, watching as the distracted guard began to realize something was wrong. 3, 2, 1, move accurat. They burst through the door and sprinted across the exposed service area, Axel keeping perfect pace beside them. Behind them, shouts of alarm rose as their escape was detected. The perimeter fence loomed ahead. 3 meters of chain link topped with security wire, a formidable barrier designed to keep intruders out rather than fugitives in. Sophia led them to a specific section of the fence where her preparation had created an advantage, a concealed cut in the chain link held in place by temporary fasteners that could be quickly removed. As Max provided lookout, she worked the fasteners free, creating an opening just large enough for them to slip through one at a time. "You first," Max urged, helping Sophia through the gap before guiding Axel to follow. As the dog cleared the fence, Max heard the approaching sounds of pursuit radios, crackling with coordinates, the pounding of boots on concrete, the distant but unmistakable sound of vehicles being mobilized. Max squeezed through the opening just as the first security personnel emerged from the building behind them. Their escape vehicle, a nondescript van with false registration, waited 50 meters beyond the fence line, its engine already running thanks to the remote starter Sophia had activated during their approach to the fence. They reached the van and piled in Sophia taking the wheel, while Max secured Axel in the specially modified rear compartment designed for quick transformations. As they accelerated away from the facility, Max began the critical task of transferring the documented evidence from his concealed devices to encrypted storage that could be transmitted to Sophia's contacts if they were intercepted before reaching safety. "Did we get enough?" Sophia asked tensely, navigating the van through back roads that formed part of their evasion route. Max reviewed the captured images and recordings, the holding facilities, the clinical documentation visible on screens, the physical condition of the captive Sentinel subjects, Kruger's damning statements about acquisition and retrieval of dogs from their handlers. More than enough, he confirmed proof of illegal seizure evidence of their research objectives. "Documentation of the conditions your legal team will have plenty to work with, Eurizo." Sophia's shoulders relaxed fractionally, though her attention remained fixed on their escape route. "We're not clear yet. Helix has resources beyond the facility itself. They'll have response teams mobilized within minutes." As if confirming her warning, a black SUV appeared in the distance behind them, closing rapidly with clear intent. Max moved to the van's rear section, where specialized equipment had been installed for exactly this scenario. "Pursuit vehicle approaching," he reported calmly. "Time to implement countermeasures." The countermeasures represented Sophia's connections to resources beyond her academic credentials equipment, more commonly associated with intelligence operations than scientific research. Max activated a device that would flood any pursuing vehicle's electronic systems with contradictory signals, temporarily disabling modern engine management systems without causing catastrophic failure. The pursuing SUV suddenly slowed its driver, clearly struggling with unexpected mechanical issues. But their respite was brief. A second vehicle appeared, this one maintaining its pursuit despite the electronic countermeasures. "They've shielded the second response team," Sophia noted grimly. "We need to reach the extraction point before they can coordinate a roadblock." The extraction point was a private airfield 20 kilometers outside Vienna, where a chartered aircraft waited to transport them to Switzerland, a jurisdiction with stronger privacy protections, and where Sophia had arranged legal representation, prepared to file for protective status for Axel, based on the evidence they had gathered. As they approached a critical junction in their escape route, Max spotted a police checkpoint ahead. Not a random traffic stop, but a deliberate blockade with multiple vehicles and officers in tactical gear. "Helix has engaged local authorities." He observed, his voice steady despite the escalating danger. "They must have connections in law enforcement." Sophia nodded grimly. "Expected we have contingency for this." She activated her communication device, implementing protocol. "Omega require immediate assistance at Junction 27. The response came almost instantly, a helicopter appearing over the tree line to their east, its unmarked fuselage suggesting private ownership rather than police or military deployment. As it descended toward a clearing adjacent to their position, Sophia executed a sharp turn off the main road, taking them down a narrow track that led directly toward the helicopter's landing zone. "Your connections are impressive," Max commented as they abandoned the van and moved swiftly toward the waiting aircraft, Axel staying close to Max's side with perfect discipline. "Elena wasn't the only one with interesting friends," Sophia replied cryptically as they boarded the helicopter, which lifted off, immediately banking sharply away from the approaching police vehicles. As they gained altitude, Max looked down at the scene below the abandoned van. The converging police and Helix security forces, the evidence of a pursuit that had failed. But he knew their journey was far from over. The documentation they had gathered was only the first step in securing protection for Axel and the other Sentinel subjects. The helicopter banked again, setting course for a private airstrip, where their connecting flight to Switzerland awaited. Max settled back in his seat, one hand resting on Axel's head as the German Shepherd pressed against his leg. Both of them momentarily safe but aware that the true challenge still lay ahead. The legal battle that followed their escape from Vienna unfolded across multiple jurisdictions and forums. Sophia's connections provided access to influential advocates within European animal welfare organizations, while Max's documentation from the Helix facility offered compelling evidence of both the enhanced cognitive capabilities of the Sentinel subjects and the ethically questionable methods being employed to recapture them. For 3 months, they operated from a secure location in the Swiss Alps, a modernized chalet owned by one of Sophia's academic colleagues who specialized in animal cognition and supported their cause. The remote setting provided safety while they built their case, though Max remained vigilant, aware that Helix's resources and determination should never be underestimated. During this period, the bond between Max and Axel deepened further. Free from immediate danger, they established new routines that balanced security with quality of life. Morning hikes through the Alpine Meadows training sessions that challenged Axel's remarkable cognitive abilities. Quiet evenings by the fire, where Max would read aloud a practice he had begun after noticing Axel's attentive response to narrative structure and complex language. Sophia observed their interactions with professional interest that gradually transformed into genuine affection for them both. Her scientific detachment gave way to personal investment as she witnessed firsthand the relationship that had developed between the former war photographer and the enhanced German Shepherd. "What you've established with him goes beyond anything we anticipated in the program," she told Max one evening as they reviewed legal documents prepared by their advocates. "The enhancement was designed to increase their capacity for human connection, but the depth of understanding you've developed together, it's extraordinary." Max looked up from the papers spread across the table to where Axel lay nearby, apparently dozing, but with one ear constantly alert to their conversation. "I think that's because I never saw him as an experiment or an asset. From the beginning, he was just Axel." The legal strategy they developed with their team of advocates focused on establishing a new classification for enhanced animals. Not property to be owned, but beings entitled to specific protections under expanded definitions of animal welfare regulations. The evidence Max had gathered from the Helix facility provided powerful support for this approach, documenting both the advanced cognitive capabilities of the Sentinel subjects and the methods being employed to exploit those capabilities. Their case gained unexpected momentum when a whistleblower within Helix came forward with additional documentation of the company's operations, including internal communications that revealed plans to develop commercial applications for enhanced canines without ethical oversight or regulatory approval. The combined evidence created enough leverage to force preliminary hearings before the European Court of Justice's specialized panel on novel biological classifications. As the legal proceedings advanced, Klaus Weber re-established contact, providing intelligence on Helix's response to their challenge. The company had suspended its more aggressive recovery operations under the scrutiny of European regulators, but remained committed to establishing legal ownership of all former Sentinel subjects. Their shifting strategy, Klaus explained during a secured video call. Instead of direct recovery operations, they're pursuing regulatory capture, trying to influence the development of classification standards that would preserve their ownership claims. The information reinforced the importance of their legal initiative, but it also highlighted the continuing risk. Until formal protections were established, Axel remained vulnerable to seizure under existing animal ownership regulations. 4 months into their legal campaign, as winter settled over the Alps, they received word that the European Court had agreed to hear arguments for special classification status for enhanced animals. The hearing would take place in Strasbourg the following month, with Sophia scheduled to provide expert testimony on the neurological basis for recognizing enhanced cognitive status. The development represented significant progress, but it also created a tactical challenge. Attending the hearing would require leaving their secure location and traveling to Strasbourg, a journey that would inevitably expose them to potential interception by Helix operatives. "It's too risky," Max argued during their strategy session. "I should remain here with Axel while you and the legal team present the case." Sophia shook her head firmly. "The court needs to see Axel to witness his capabilities firsthand. Abstract arguments about enhanced cognition are one thing, but direct demonstration will be far more persuasive. The debate continued for days with security plans developed and refined to address every conceivable vulnerability. Finally, a compromise was reached. They would travel to Strasbourg by a circuitous route with multiple security measures, and Axel would be present for only the specific portion of the hearing where his cognitive abilities would be demonstrated. Their journey to Strasbourg began in pre-dawn darkness, with a trusted local guide leading them through mountain paths to avoid main transportation hubs where surveillance would be most likely. The winter landscape presented its own challenges: snow-covered trails, shortened daylight hours, the constant risk of weather changes that could leave them exposed or delayed. On the second day of their journey, as they traversed a high alpine pass connecting Switzerland to France, Max's instinct signaled danger before any concrete evidence appeared. Something about the quality of silence, the absence of expected wildlife movements, triggered the hypervigilance he had developed during his years documenting conflicts. Axel confirmed his suspicions moments later, his body language shifting subtly as he scented the air currents sweeping up from the valley below. The German shepherd moved closer to Max, his posture communicating alert caution rather than immediate alarm. Their guide noticed the change as well, motioning for them to take cover behind a rocky outcropping that offered concealment from the trail ahead. Within minutes, they heard the sounds that explained Axel's warning voices, carrying in the clear mountain air the distinctive cadence of coordinated movement rather than casual hikers. A Helix response team, Max whispered, recognizing the disciplined approach of professional operatives. They've anticipated our route. The guide nodded grimly, pointing to an alternative path that branched from their planned route, steeper, more technically challenging, but offering escape from their pursuers. Without hesitation, they changed direction, moving with careful speed across terrain that demanded full attention to avoid fatal missteps. The detour added hours to their journey and forced them to navigate a treacherous ridge as daylight waned. With night falling and temperatures dropping rapidly, they faced a critical decision: continue in dangerous conditions or seek shelter and risk discovery if their pursuers expanded their search pattern. The decision was made for them when swirling snow began to reduce visibility to mere meters, transforming the already challenging terrain into a potentially lethal environment. Their guide led them to an emergency shelter, a simple stone structure used by alpine shepherds during the summer months and maintained as a refuge for winter travelers caught by changing conditions. The shelter offered basic protection from the elements, but little security if their pursuers tracked them to its location. They established watches, with Max taking the first shift. While Sophia and their guide rested, Axel remained alert beside him, occasionally rising to investigate sounds beyond the shelter's walls before returning to his vigilant position. During his watch, Max found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him to this moment. 2 years earlier, he had been a broken man, his professional accomplishments hollow in the wake of Elena's death, his future a blank expanse without purpose or passion. Now he was fighting not just for Axel's freedom, but for recognition of something profound, the capacity for connection that transcended conventional boundaries between species. His thoughts were interrupted by Axel's sudden alertness, ears forward, body tensed, attention fixed on the shelter's entrance. Seconds later, Max heard what had triggered the response: the faint but unmistakable sound of approaching footsteps. Too deliberate to be wildlife, too stealthy to be innocent travelers seeking refuge, he woke Sophia and their guide with silent gestures, communicating the danger without words. They had prepared for this possibility, developing contingency plans for various scenarios, including discovery at a rest point. Their options were limited by the storm raging outside, but the shelter's construction offered one advantage: a secondary exit designed to remain accessible even when snow accumulated against the main entrance. As the approaching operatives reached the shelter, Max and his companions slipped through the narrow rear exit, emerging into the full force of the alpine storm. Visibility had deteriorated further with driving snow, reducing their visual field to arm's length. Under normal circumstances, attempting to navigate mountain terrain in such conditions would be suicidal, but remaining meant certain capture. Their guide led them upslope away from the established trail, using his intimate knowledge of the landscape to find a path where none was visible to untrained eyes. The storm that threatened their survival also provided cover from pursuit, masking their tracks almost as quickly as they were made. For hours, they struggled through the blizzard, each step requiring conscious effort, the cold penetrating their specialized gear despite its technical quality. Axel moved through the challenging conditions with remarkable endurance, occasionally forging ahead to find the most navigable route before returning to guide them forward. Dawn broke with grudging illumination, the storm diminishing to reveal their position on an exposed ridge far from their planned route. Below them stretched a valley they had not intended to traverse, its floor obscured by low clouds that suggested continuing precipitation. Behind them, no signs of pursuit were visible, but Max harbored no illusions that Helix had abandoned the search. Their guide consulted maps and GPS coordinates, calculating a new route that would eventually reconnect with their extraction plan. The detour would add another day to their journey, pushing the limits of their supplies and their endurance. But it offered the best chance of reaching Strasbourg undetected. The additional day proved grueling, with rapidly changing weather conditions and terrain that demanded constant attention to avoid injury. By the time they reached the extraction point, a small farming community where supporters waited with transportation to Strasbourg, all three humans were exhausted to the point of stumbling. Only Axel maintained his alert vigilance, his enhanced physiology, demonstrating remarkable resilience through the ordeal. Their arrival in Strasbourg occurred mere hours before the scheduled hearing, leaving minimal time for recovery and preparation. The legal team that met them at a secure location expressed concern about their condition, but acknowledged the importance of proceeding as planned. Too much had been invested in this opportunity to postpone regardless of their physical state. The European Court of Justice's specialized panel convened in a modern chamber designed for cases involving complex scientific evidence. Security was heightened due to the unusual nature of the proceedings, with access strictly limited to authorized participants. Max, clean and dressed appropriately, but still bearing the fatigue of their journey, took his place in the observation area, while Sophia prepared to present expert testimony. Axel remained in a secured ante-room attended by a veterinarian who had been briefed on his enhanced status and a security detail arranged by their advocates. The German Shepherd would be brought into the chamber only when required for demonstration, a compromise that balanced evidential needs with security concerns. The hearing began with legal arguments establishing the framework for considering enhanced animals as a new classification, requiring specific protections. Helix's representatives countered with assertions that any cognitive enhancements were simply extensions of conventional breeding and training, not qualifying for special consideration under existing statutes. When Sophia took the stand as an expert witness, her testimony shifted the tenor of the proceedings. With clinical precision, she detailed the neurological modifications created by the Sentinel program, presenting brain scans and cognitive assessment data that demonstrated capabilities far beyond conventional canine parameters. What we're discussing is not merely an incremental improvement in existing capabilities, she explained to the panel. The enhancement protocol created fundamental changes in neural connectivity and processing that result in cognitive functions qualitatively different from conventional canine cognition. These subjects demonstrate self-awareness, complex problem-solving, emotional intelligence, and communication capabilities that place them in a category requiring ethical and legal recognition. The Helix legal team attacked her credibility aggressively, questioning her objectivity given her former involvement with Project Sentinel, and suggesting her current advocacy represented an attempt to assuage personal guilt rather than objective scientific assessment. Sophia remained unshaken, her academic precision a perfect counterpoint to their insinuations. My ethical concerns about the program are precisely what qualify me to address its implications, she responded calmly. I understand both the scientific achievements represented by these enhanced animals and the moral responsibilities their creation entails. The pivotal moment came when the panel requested the demonstration they had been prepared for direct observation of Axel's capabilities. As the German Shepherd was brought into the chamber, a palpable shift in energy occurred. Even those most skeptical of the special classification claims couldn't help but notice his bearing, the alert intelligence in his amber eyes, the purposeful dignity of his movements, the evident awareness of the proceeding's significance. The demonstration had been carefully designed to showcase cognitive abilities that transcended conventional training. Rather than performing tricks or following commands, Axel was presented with novel problem-solving scenarios that required adaptive thinking and independent decision-making. Most compelling was the communication assessment, where Axel demonstrated understanding of abstract concepts by selecting representational symbols in response to complex verbal prompts. When presented with an ethical scenario involving competing needs, helping one individual versus preventing harm to many, he consistently selected the option representing the greatest good, demonstrating moral reasoning typically considered unique to humans. Throughout the demonstration, Max observed the panel members' reactions shifting from professional skepticism to undeniable interest. Even Helix's representatives appeared momentarily disarmed by the irrefutable evidence before them, the very capabilities they sought to control now being used to argue for protections against that control. When the demonstration concluded, the panel's senior member addressed a question directly to Max, breaking with typical protocol. "Mr. Herrmann, you have lived with this enhanced animal for several years. Beyond these formal assessments, what has been your personal observation of his cognitive nature?" Max rose, feeling the weight of responsibility in this moment. His answer would not be scientific, like Sophia's testimony, or legally structured like their advocates' arguments. It would be personal, drawn from the depths of his experience with Axel. "When I first received Axel, I was grieving the loss of my wife." He began, his voice steady despite the emotion underlying his words. "I was a broken man, with little interest in connecting with anyone or anything. What developed between us wasn't a conventional pet-owner relationship. It was a partnership based on mutual recognition." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "Axel doesn't simply respond to commands or perform functions. He makes choices. He solves problems I haven't anticipated. He demonstrates empathy when I'm struggling and respects boundaries I never had to teach him. Most importantly, he shows agency, the capacity to assess situations independently and take actions based on his own judgment." Max gestured toward the German Shepherd, who sat attentively beside Sophia. "When he saved my life on a mountain ridge, it wasn't trained behavior. The ground collapsed beneath me and Axel made a split-second decision, calculating the physics of counterbalance to prevent my fall while ensuring his own safety. That's not obedience or conditioning, that's consciousness." The chamber remained silent when he finished speaking, his words hanging in the air with simple authenticity that transcended legal formalities. After a moment, the panel's senior member nodded thoughtfully and announced they would deliberate before issuing their preliminary finding. The deliberation lasted longer than anticipated, extending into evening before the panel reconvened. Their preliminary ruling, while not a final legal determination, established critical precedent, enhanced animals demonstrating cognitive capabilities beyond conventional parameters would be granted interim protected status, while a comprehensive framework was developed for their classification and rights. For Axel specifically, the ruling granted immediate protection from seizure or experimentation, requiring any entity claiming interest in enhanced animals to prove their intended treatment would respect their advanced cognitive status. More broadly, the ruling commissioned a specialized ethics committee to develop permanent guidelines for the treatment and legal standing of enhanced animals. The immediate victory was significant but incomplete. Helix immediately filed appeals in multiple jurisdictions while simultaneously intensifying their lobbying efforts with regulatory bodies. The legal battle would continue, but the preliminary ruling provided breathing room time to build stronger protections while ensuring Axel's immediate safety. As they left the courthouse through a secured exit, Max felt a complex mixture of emotions: relief at the immediate outcome, determination regarding the challenges ahead, and a profound sense of having witnessed something historically significant. Beside him, Axel moved with the same alert awareness that had characterized him throughout their journey, his amber eyes scanning their surroundings, with practiced vigilance. "Cinnamon, this isn't over," Sophia cautioned as they entered the vehicle arranged for their secure transport. "Helix will pursue every legal avenue, and they still have operatives who might attempt extra-legal solutions if they become desperate enough." Siranan and Kikarianasaman. Max nodded, understanding the reality of their situation. The ruling provided legal protection, but not absolute security. Until more permanent protections were established, they would need to remain vigilant. "Where do we go from here?" he asked, one hand resting on Axel's head as the German Shepherd settled beside him in the vehicle. "Not back to the Alps," Sophia replied decisively. "It's too isolated, too easy to operate there without oversight. We need somewhere with more visibility where attempting to seize Axel would generate immediate public attention." The solution emerged from an unexpected source. Klaus Weber, monitoring the proceedings from his position within military intelligence, arranged a temporary residence for them in Berlin, an apartment in a diplomatic quarter where security was heightened and surveillance was routine. The location offered both protection and access to the European officials who would be developing the permanent classification framework. For the next 6 months, they operated from this Berlin base, working with legal advocates and ethics specialists to build a case for comprehensive protections. Axel's capabilities became the centerpiece of the developing framework, a living demonstration of why enhanced animals required special consideration. Throughout this period, Max continued documenting their journey, his photographer's instinct recognizing the historical significance of what was unfolding. His images captured not just the legal proceedings and formal assessments, but the quiet moments that revealed Axel's true nature. His contemplative observation of rainfall patterns on windows, his careful interaction with children who visited as part of the assessment process, his evident concern when Sophia worked through the night on legal briefs, bringing her blankets without being instructed. These images, combined with Max's written accounts, began circulating among influential advocates and decision-makers, putting a compelling face on what might otherwise have remained an abstract legal question. The narrative that emerged wasn't about ownership rights or research assets, but about recognizing the personhood of a being who thought, felt, and chose with evident consciousness. As summer approached, Helix's legal challenges began faltering under the weight of accumulated evidence and shifting public opinion. Their appeals were denied in multiple jurisdictions, and regulatory scrutiny of their operations intensified. When financial backers began withdrawing support, concerned about association with increasingly controversial practices, the company's aggressive pursuit of Sentinel subjects noticeably diminished. The turning point came unexpectedly during what was supposed to be a routine hearing on procedural matters. A junior executive from Helix, facing mounting pressure from investigators examining the company's methods, broke ranks and provided comprehensive documentation of operations that went far beyond what Max had initially captured. The evidence included detailed plans for military applications of enhanced animals that would place them in situations of extreme danger without ethical constraints. The resulting scandal accelerated the development of permanent protections. By late summer, the European Commission had adopted binding regulations recognizing enhanced animals as a protected category with specific rights, not equivalent to human rights, but significantly beyond conventional animal welfare provisions. Most critically, the regulations explicitly prohibited ownership claims based on development involvement, effectively ending Helix's attempts to reclaim Axel and other Sentinel subjects. With the immediate legal battle resolved, Max found himself at a crossroads. The Berlin apartment had served its purpose, but it wasn't home. The Swiss chalet offered security, but reminded them too much of their time as fugitives. His original cabin in the Bavarian Alps held too many security concerns given its isolation. "We need somewhere new," he told Sophia during one of their now regular dinners. "Somewhere Axel can live without constant scrutiny, but with enough community that isolation isn't a security risk." Sophia, who had become far more than a temporary ally during their months of shared struggle, considered the question thoughtfully. "What about the Austrian Alps? Not as remote as your Bavarian cabin, but still offering the mountain environment Axel clearly thrives in." The suggestion resonated with Max. Austria had been supportive of their legal initiative, and certain regions offered the perfect balance of community and natural space that would suit both his and Axel's needs. By early autumn, they had settled in a small Austrian village nestled against the Eastern Alps. The property Max purchased featured expansive grounds bordering national forest, providing Axel with ample space to exercise his remarkable capabilities while maintaining connection to a supportive community. The local authorities, briefed on Axel's special status, provided discreet monitoring that enhanced their security without intruding on their privacy. Sophia returned to Vienna, but visited regularly. Her relationship with Max and Axel, evolving from professional alliance to genuine friendship. Her research now focused on the ethical dimensions of enhanced cognition, with Axel serving as both subject and collaborator in studies designed with his full participation and consent. Klaus maintained periodic contact, providing updates on the dismantling of Helix's more questionable operations and the status of other Sentinel subjects. Several had been located and brought under the protection of the new regulations, though a few remained unaccounted for, a reminder that their work was not yet complete. As winter approached, bringing the anniversary of their dramatic escape from the Helix facility, Max's photography career experienced unexpected renewal. A carefully edited collection of images documenting their journey from the dramatic mountain landscapes of their flight to the quiet moments of connection between man and dog attracted attention from major galleries and publications. The accompanying narrative, telling Axel's story with dignity rather than sensation, sparked important conversations about consciousness, personhood, and the ethical boundaries of scientific advancement. 1 year after the European Court's final ruling establishing permanent protections for enhanced animals, Max and Axel stood together on another mountain ridge, this time in the Austrian Alps. The autumn landscape spread before them in a tapestry of gold and crimson, the valley below shrouded in morning mist that would burn away as the day progressed. Max adjusted his camera, framing a shot of an eagle soaring through the valley, an echo of the moment that had nearly cost him his life 2 years earlier. The memory no longer carried fear, but served as a reminder of the journey that had brought them to this point. Axel sat beside him, his posture relaxed but attentive, his amber eyes tracking the eagle's flight with evident appreciation. At 5 years since his enhancement and 7 since his birth, the German Shepherd was in his prime, his coat gleaming with health, his movements displaying the perfect balance of power and precision that characterized his kind. "What do you think, boy?" Max asked, reviewing the captured image on his camera's display. "Good composition?" Axel studied the image with the focused attention he brought to all their interactions, then looked up at Max with an expression that somehow conveyed thoughtful assessment. After a moment, he gently bumped Max's elbow, nudging the camera slightly to the left, a gesture they had developed during their months of working together on Max's photography. Max laughed and adjusted the frame as suggested. "You're right. Better balance this way." He captured the revised composition and nodded with satisfaction. "Perfect." As they continued their morning hike along the ridge, Max reflected on how their relationship had evolved since the court's ruling had secured Axel's protected status. Without the constant pressure of evading pursuit or building legal defenses, they had discovered new dimensions to their partnership. Axel's cognitive capabilities continued to develop in unexpected ways. He had mastered a symbolic communication system developed by Sophia that allowed more complex expression than conventional training methods permitted. He demonstrated preferences, opinions, and occasionally stubborn insistence on his own approach to situations, not with aggression or defiance, but with the quiet confidence of a being who knew his own mind. For his part, Max had found renewed purpose not just in documenting their journey, but in advocating for recognition of enhanced cognition in all its forms. His photography now focused on capturing the evidence of consciousness in beings whose personhood was often overlooked or denied, not just enhanced animals like Axel, but conventional animals whose capabilities were frequently underestimated. Their life had settled into a rhythm that balanced security with freedom. Regular assessments with Sophia's research team ensured Axel's enhanced capabilities remained stable, while their home in the Austrian village provided both community connection and the natural environment that suited the German Shepherd's need for physical and mental stimulation. As they reached a particularly dramatic overlook, Max set up his tripod for a landscape shot that would require longer exposure. Axel settled nearby, his attention shifting between Max's work in the surrounding environment with the vigilance that never entirely disappeared despite their increased security. "I never properly thanked you," Max said quietly as he adjusted his camera settings. "Not just for saving my life twice, but for everything that came after, for giving me a reason to keep moving forward when I'd lost my way." Axel rose and moved closer, pressing his forehead against Max's shoulder, a gesture so simple yet profound in its trust. Whatever science had enhanced in the German Shepherd's cognitive abilities, the true miracle was the bond they had formed. In saving Max from the cliff's edge, Axel had also pulled him back from an emotional precipice, giving him purpose when grief had emptied his world of meaning. They remained on the ridge until the light began to shift, signaling the approach of evening. As they descended the trail together, the setting sun cast their shadows as a single elongated form on the ground. Before them, man and dog moving as one through a world that had tried to separate them, but ultimately strengthened their bond beyond what either could have imagined. The legal victory that had secured Axel's protected status represented an important milestone, but Max understood that the true achievement lay in the recognition of something more fundamental, that consciousness and connection transcended conventional boundaries, creating obligations of respect and care that no legal framework could fully capture. As they reached the village path that would lead them home, lights were beginning to appear in windows, creating pools of warmth against the gathering dusk. Sophia would be arriving the next day for her monthly visit, bringing news of the ongoing efforts to locate and protect the remaining Sentinel subjects. Klaus had promised updates on the international adoption of enhanced cognition protections modeled on the European framework. The work continued, the journey unfolding with new challenges and discoveries. But in this moment, walking the familiar path home, with Axel moving in perfect synchrony beside him, Max felt a sense of completion that had eluded him since Elena's death. Not an ending to grief or struggle, but an integration of loss and discovery into a life of meaning and purpose. The wind picked up as they approached their home, carrying the scent of approaching winter. Axel lifted his head, sampling the air currents with evident appreciation, his enhanced senses gathering information beyond human perception. Whatever he detected in those currents, changes in weather patterns, wildlife movements, the complex tapestry of environmental information, it was processed through a consciousness that science had enhanced but could never fully explain. Max opened the gate to their property, and they moved together toward the warmth and security of home. Tomorrow would bring new challenges in their ongoing work to secure protection for all enhanced beings. But tonight was for rest, for reflection, for the quiet acknowledgement of how far they had come from that moment on a Bavarian mountain ridge, when a dog with extraordinary capabilities had saved a grieving man from falling, not just from a physical cliff edge, but from the precipice of a life without purpose or connection. As they crossed the threshold into their home, Axel looked up at Max with those intelligent amber eyes that had seen him at his most vulnerable and his most determined. In that gaze lay understanding that transcended species boundaries, a connection forged through shared adversity and mutual respect. "Homeboy," Max said softly, closing the door against the gathering night. "We're home,